This is the Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition. Coming up,
familiar sounds and smells and flavors and people. People gives me the feeling of home.
They had nothing Jewish over here. No synagogue, no mikveh, no kosher food. There was absolutely nothing for them.
Our community programs span the entire year. We have every Shabbat, we all eat together. We have holiday programs for every single holiday. We do everything together as one big Jewish family.
So sit back and enjoy the trip with David Harris and Mark Gordon.
Greetings, David.
Hello. Are you still a sailor?
No, I'm on dry land, although given the weather, I think there was less water at sea.
I get the impression that as we record this at the end of November 2025, there is something of a damp patch over the Mediterranean.
I looked at home back in Israel and it was flooded, and in Rome it hasn't stopped raining for 2 days. So sightseeing has very much been pop out from under a cover, get your little selfie in front of the site and then go away again.
A chance for some romance with Mrs. Gordon.
Exactly. We've been to lots of nice restaurants and now we're in not the Circus Maximus, but the Maximo, which is a lovely shopping centre.
Enjoy. I'm glad to hear that at least you're doing something. I have just landed literally in a new part of China, and I'm delighted to be back in Shanghai, which is where you and I were a year ago.
Yeah, I have to say Shanghai was my favourite city. It was that wonderful mix of Western culture and Chinese culture brought together beautifully.
I've just arrived at the hotel. It was about a 45-minute journey from the airport. I think I'm the only person, certainly the only person in the group who has been to Shanghai in the recent past. And the oohs and the ahs as we drove through nighttime Shanghai with everything firelit. There was even a fireworks display off in the distance. Yeah, everybody was absolutely wowed by this city.
Where are you staying this time?
Staying in, I guess it's kind of a residential area. It's about a half an hour's walk from the main shopping areas and so on, in a hotel called Ginkgo, but I'm not sure exactly how it's pronounced. But what I did notice as I came in is they have a whole meditation area and place for tea ceremonies, and there are kimonos at the entrance. And yes, I am in China, but apparently the Chinese have got a thing for Japanese culture, which is remarkable when you think about the history of these two countries. And I'm sure that's something that we will be tracing throughout this podcast, which is going to focus a lot of the time on the wartime story, Second World wartime story, and what happened to Jews who left Europe, about 20,000 Jews, and ended up in Shanghai.
I'm looking forward to hearing all about that. I'm just really sad I can't be with you.
I'm sorry, my friend. Would you like me to ask you a quiz question so you can feel better?
Yeah, it's better than asking my wife, can I leave our holiday and come and join you?
Just before I ask the question, let me just remind for those of you who haven't heard, I am with a group of 7 Israelis who belong to the organization of former Jewish residents of China. And they've been on a roots trip to Tianjin and Harbin. They're actually all from the Harbin area, their parents, their grandparents, but we're ending the tour here in Shanghai. And the question from Shanghai is as follows. What is the total route length of the Shanghai Metro, the longest underground system in the world?
And would you like that answer in miles or kilometres?
Both are acceptable and both will be provided.
Excellent. The answer at the end of the podcast.
This is Mark Gordon from the Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition. Find us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at MarkDavidPod, or mail us at markdavidpod@gmail.com.
I've come about half an hour in a taxi out of the downtown area, and right in front of me there's watermelon, there's rogalach, there's I think something akin to kichels, but they don't call them that in Israel. And I just had some amazing cinnamon rolls, and there is a phenomenal kosher menu because I'm in the restaurant at the Chabad Center for Shanghai. And I'm being hosted by a couple very special people. They are the Chabad emissaries or shluchim. Let's find out who they are.
My name is Shalom Greenberg. I am from Israel originally. Been in Shanghai with my wife since 1998.
Tina Greenberg, originally from Cleveland, Ohio. My parents are also shluchim. My grandparents were shluchim and active in Cleveland. And thank God we are blessed to be here together in Shanghai.
Why Shanghai?
When we got married, we spoke that we would like to take the shlichut to another level and not just help an existing Chabad house or not just go to an existing Jewish community and enrich them with the Chabad philosophy and Chabad outreach, but to go to a place where there are Jews but no Jewish infrastructure and try to build everything from zero. We looked around, and one of those places that needed a shluchim to do this was Shanghai, China. We looked at each other and said, is that crazy enough to do? Decided to give it a try.
When you say there was no infrastructure, what was there here of a Jewish nature?
Sure, your listeners already know that there was a very rich and large Jewish community here in Shanghai until the 1950s. But then the Jewish community ceased to exist, and everything that belonged to the Jewish community was either sold or taken over by the Chinese government. So the only thing that's remained is nothing. When Jewish people came back in 1990s, they had nothing Jewish over here. No synagogue, no mikveh, no kosher food. There was absolutely nothing for them. They wanted to be able to practice their Judaism even in Shanghai.
So what's it like to arrive in a city where there is nothing? I'm watching you now, you're managing the staff in the kitchen. We're recording this on a Thursday, you're getting ready Shabbos meals, you're both getting emails from people who want to join you for Shabbos. So what's it like from your perspective to come here when there's so little?
When we first came, we had to make a decision if we're going to laugh or cry. We decided to laugh through it. And so Baruch Hashem, with a lot of help from above, we have tried to make here whatever a regular Jewish community would have. So if we don't have challah, then we try to make it. If we don't have regalach, we make them. And those delicious cinnamon buns that you had. And that goes across the board with all of our activities here. If we don't have a mikveh, so we had to find a way to build a mikveh. We didn't have Jewish education, so we need to provide that. So that's really been our motto from the get-go.
Tell me about how you educated your kids.
With a lot of help from above. Our children have friends from the community, and it's wonderful that they come over every Shabbat. They come over for Sunday for Hebrew school. We try very much to open our home and to share our family with everyone, so our whole community becomes our family. So for example, Friday nights we all eat together. Shabbos day we're eating together, so the whole community is invited to join with us and celebrate with us. So regarding our Jewish education for our children, we have a wonderful online school for Shluchim's children. It's called the Shluchim's Online School. There are separate divisions for different time zones. So we are on the Israeli time zone because that matches our time zone, kind of. So our children will start 8 o'clock in the morning Israel time, which is really 2 or 3 in the afternoon China time. They also have American time zones for East Coast and West Coast. And like this, our children actually have been learning an incredible school on an incredible level and with wonderful friends and teachers for all these years. And then for high school, they will go abroad to a good high school that suits them. Thank God we've been able to manage our children to be in schools where there's family nearby. And then they continue on. They go to seminary, to yeshiva, etc. Our children come back home to help us sometimes too. So that's also been a wonderful experience to have them back as adults helping us with our programming.
Before we started recording, your 8-year-old daughter was here, and you asked her to name her friends or say where they're from, because I had no idea about this online school. So I assumed you were going to talk about 3 or 4 kids who happened to come here to study. And then I think she listed about 18 kids who were in her class, which is absolutely amazing. Talk to me numbers in terms of the size of the Jewish community that you found. It's had ups, it's had its downs. Where did it start and where is it up to?
So when we came here in 1998, there were a few hundred Jewish people living in Shanghai. Some of them were entrepreneurs, some of them were general managers of companies, some were students, some were professors and so on. Mostly they were living here for 2 or 3 years and then move on. We came to this kind of community and we started to work with them. But what the little we knew is that we didn't predict the future, and there were more and more Jewish people coming to Shanghai. And then we opened a second Chabad house downtown, and then we opened another Chabad house in Pudong area. At the year 2018 or 19, we were about 5,000 Jewish people living here. But not only the Jewish people who were living here that we would cater to, we also catered to a lot of businessmen, travelers, who were traveling here for business for a short time, for 1 week or 2 weeks, and they needed kosher food, they needed Shabbat and so on, so we cater for them as well. Then we found ourselves catering also to tour groups, and the tourists were coming to Shanghai. So it was at its peak, we were catering, we were 3 very active Chabad houses in Shanghai. But then came Corona and people left and business people could not show up anymore and tourists were not coming, so we had to close 2 of the Chabad houses. And now we have about 500 Jewish people that live in Shanghai, and we are catering to them as well. Of course, that it's like feeling almost like going back to our first few years that we were in Shanghai. At the peak, we had 2 branches of our preschool in Shanghai with about almost 50 kids. And then we had 2 branches of a Hebrew school with about 80 kids. And it was a very busy and active community. But now it's much less. Of course, it doesn't worry me at all. My motto is that I'm here as long as I'm able to cater the needs of the Jewish people that are here. Doesn't matter how many they are. I'm not encouraging people to come back here. I'm not encouraging people to make Aliyah to Shanghai. That's not my goal. My goal is to serve and to help the Jewish people who live here to be in touch with Judaism and to be able to have an active Jewish life here in Shanghai.
You used a very important word in there, which is to cater. And a lot of people listening to this will be people who maybe would be thinking about coming to visit Shanghai. So back to the cinnamon buns or rolls, that's easy. You can get cinnamon, you can get the flour, but for example, your midweek menu, and I'm sure it's the same on Shabbat, features meats and fish. How do you cater?
First of all, the basics, the raw material we have to get here. It doesn't happen by itself. We cannot just, call the butcher and order a few chickens for Shabbat and then call the bakery and order chalot and then, order from the wine shop wine. It doesn't work like that over here. We have to bring it. We have to make it happen. So I jokingly say to people on Friday night, I worked on your meal tonight for over a year. Because, we bring the meat from Argentina and we cannot bring the meat every week. We bring it once a year or twice a year. We import a container of frozen meat. And then we bring the wine from Israel. It's the same. It's a container. We bring it from Israel and so on. But then comes the operations that we do over here. The slaughtering chicken, the shechita we do over here. Baking the chalot we do over here. And the bread we do over here. Everything we do over here. Local. And that is a huge effort. Number one, to train the staff to know what kind of food we like. And then, of course, all the kosher observances. They have to know that they must sift the flour. We must check the eggs. We must take a fashat chalad. They cannot just move on. All the greeneries that we have to wash it very carefully and check for bugs and so on. So there's a lot of work going in to make a Shabbat meal.
It's funny you were talking about checking for bugs. I was in Nanjing Road in some of the more touristy places, but where the Chinese go, not the foreigners, and the amount of bugs I saw on sticks today was quite something. Not exactly kosher. In a minute, I'll ask you for the details, how people can find you and so on. But I want to play a quick game, which is something that I've not done before. We're going to take turns, and we'll see when you run out. I'm going to ask you to come up with words, and I want the word to be a part of your job as shlichim. You can decide what words are appropriate, but I think the idea that a shaliach is just somebody who hosts meals on a Friday night and hands out vodka and everybody sings songs is very much the tip of the tourist iceberg. So we'll start with you.
Ladies programs.
Help every Jew with what he needs.
Children's activities.
Shiurei Torah.
Classes and lectures.
Shul.
International school workshops on morals and values.
Kosher food.
The mikveh. We call that our spa for the soul.
We are the Chevra Kadisha when a Jew passes away. We are the people who arrange the mohel when a Jew is born. They teach the kids bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah when they that age. We do the chuppahs when they time to die for the chuppah. We also arrange for organize with the Beit Din to divorce papers if they need that to happen. We also try to separate them from the non-Jewish women that they meet over here, and to match them with Jewish women, so their Jewish life will be continued. So yes, we try to help every Jew with their needs at this stage in their life.
Our community programs span the entire year. We have every Shabbat, we all eat together. Like we mentioned before, we have holiday programs for every single holiday. And we do everything together as one big Jewish family.
So who looks after you?
Hashem. We have, thank God, we are very blessed to be very connected to the Rebbe. And we know that the Rebbe's blessings are really escorting us in everything that we do.
We also have a support of family, friends who are shluchim, and they understand the dilemmas and challenges that we have. So when we have a need for help or support, we do have this network of great people that we support each other when the times of needs.
Are there hotels that are in walking distance of your Chabad center?
Yes, there are quite a few hotels and are listed on our website, shanghaiJewishCenter.com. And walking distance, 8 minutes walk, 10 minutes walk, 15 minutes walk. There's a 5-star hotel, a 4-star hotel, 3-star hotel, 2-star hotels. Every person that can find their hotel and the amount of the day like to walk. There are even service apartments nearby. So it's very easy to make it happen.
I would also say if you are somebody who's listening with walking difficulties, everything here is incredibly flat. So that definitely makes things a lot easier. The cafe, the restaurant, midweek, when is it open?
Every day from 8 o'clock until 9:30, and visitors are all welcome to come. We also deliver, so if someone is touring or is doing business here, we're happy to send the kosher food wherever they are.
Yet again, I've met an incredible Chabad couple. We've traveled around the world, and as Mark can attest, we've found just incredible people who are making sure that Jewish travelers, and of course the people who live in those towns, but for the purpose of this podcast, the Jewish traveler has a Jewish experience whilst also being able to enjoy the city where they're visiting, or in fact the mountains that they're visiting. So to both of you, the Greenbergs, thank you very much indeed.
It's a pleasure meeting you, and I hope that this podcast will reach the people who are coming to Shanghai, or they know of people who are coming to Shanghai, even if they're not religious yet, and they just want to come in for a Seder Pesach, or if they want to come in for a major Jewish holiday, or just want to have a nice Friday night meal with other Jewish people. They are welcome to come here. We have people walking in this door from all levels of observance, from all walks of life. If you're Jewish, please feel comfortable to come in and enjoy the services that Chabad House gives.
Yes, we'll be very happy to welcome everyone. Thank you very much for this interview. Shalom to all the listeners. And again, the website is shanghaiJewishCenter.com.
This is the Jerusalem Post Podcast Travel Edition. Find us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at MarkDavidPod, or mail us at markdavidpod@gmail.com.
A very good morning from the television tower in Shanghai. As Mark would mention if he were here, David has an incredible fear of heights, and I'm delighted to say that at least one other member of the group has. We're in the elevator, which is the usual place that we record these types of things. We don't have windows to the exterior and no video screens showing us the exterior, so I have no idea how far up we are. But we're going to be ascending about 250 meters, which is probably, as a guess, about 800 feet. But the total of the tower is 1,500 feet, or about 460 meters. This is the main broadcasting tower for the Shanghai area, and we'll have stunning views over the area of downtown Shanghai. It's right next to one of the main rivers, which if I remember rightly is called the Huangpu. There are 3 rivers that come through here. One of the others is the Yangtze, and this is one of the major ports of the world. We had an experience with the Shanghai port a year ago, and now I've come up to, everywhere in China there are people talking into microphones. Come up to the top, the river below is brown, there are many boats on it, many of them cargo, low barges carrying maybe 30 containers on each one. I see one of the side rivers entering into the Huangpo. On the other side of the river, these are buildings that are dwarfed, that at one point were the pride of this city. We're talking about buildings that were constructed probably around the start of the 20th century. And as I probably said on the podcast last year, it looks like the waterfront of the Mersey River in Liverpool. But what absolutely dwarfs them is the enormity of this skyscraper city. All I can see for the 180 degrees that I'm now looking at the other side of the river, which is where a lot of the city is skyscrapers and residential apartment buildings, but you're talking about buildings that are maybe 40 stories high. It's quite remarkable just how much this city has grown. The place where I am standing right now, well, if I were on the ground, not mid-air, well, this, even 40 years ago, 30 years ago, was farmland. And now this is a city. The actual centre of the city is 24 million people. It is the third largest city in the world, and if you take into account the broader area around it, then you're looking at around 40 million people. If you're listening to this in Israel, you'll understand that this city alone is 2.5 times the size of the population of Israel. It's really hard to imagine unless you actually come here, and then obviously you're not imagining and seeing, but when you come up here to this height of the viewing platform, you feel it, you see it. It is unimaginable. It is just on a scale that doesn't register. It's a beautiful morning in Shanghai. It's late November. There are still leaves on the trees, the sun is shining, and there's lots of traffic. It's one of the world's greatest cities in terms of population, in terms of area. It's got a massive airport with 5 runways. And if you listen to our podcast from Shanghai a year ago, you'll remember Mark and I attempted to cross over a road. And we didn't manage because there were so many people in front of us that when the light turned green for pedestrians and the police officers blew their whistles, we simply didn't get over in time. In the background is our tour guide explaining something about where we're headed, but I can tell you we're going to the Jewish Refugees Museum that we were at a year ago. But what we hopefully will be able to do there today, which we didn't do when I was here last year with Mark, is to visit the synagogue that was undergoing refurbishments. So I'll talk to you from there in a few minutes. Meantime, I guess I should actually listen to the tour guide and the translation. He's being translated into Hebrew, which is why I'm not bringing it to you necessarily directly, but maybe we'll get Jay, who you heard in our previous podcasts from China in this series, to do some translation for us a bit later on as well.
The chairs here are quite funky. They're tartan, and embroidered on the back are some pictures of foxes with monocles.
We've opened a fine rosé from the Pays d'Oc region of southeastern France.
To stand in front of the Birth of Venus by Botticelli and just take it in.
Turning their backs on these magnificent architectural wonders, and all they want to do is have that Instagram moment.
I listened to the guide for 2 minutes while I was on Wikipedia.
You're listening to the Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition with Mark Gordon and David Harris.
From 1938 to 1941, about 20,000 European Jews came to Shanghai, in which more than 14,000 lived in Hong Kong. Fortunately, they survived the darkest years together with their neighbors in Hong Kong. Have passed, but Jews, including former Shanghailanders, and the surviving families of the deceased cherish the memories of Shanghai and Hong Kong. Now, let's push open the door of time and revisit this special history.
Before going into the synagogue by the museum, the synagogue known as Ohel Moshe, the group is doing a tour of the museum and learning about a different history of the Jews of China. There's of course the historic Kaifeng community from the period of the Song dynasty, which pretty much intermarried into the Han Chinese, and so any vestiges of that community today are in occasional customs that are found in that part of the world, but we're talking about something from hundreds of years ago. So the first real influx of Jews came in the mid to late 19th century when business people from British Empire nations set up shop in Shanghai. Famous families like the Sassoons, Iraqi Jews who saw an opportunity in Shanghai. At that point, Shanghai was a small port, but the various European powers viewed the city and its waterfront as an opportunity to introduce commerce into China. That was really the first influx of Jews and was comparatively small, in the hundreds, maybe a few thousand. The second entry of Jews into Shanghai came from places like Harbin, which we covered in the last podcast on China. People who saw yet another opportunity. The Jews who were living in Harbin had come from Russia when the railroad arrived in Harbin and saw that as an opportunity for business relations. They then found that there were other chances to create strong businesses in Shanghai as this city grew in leaps and bounds. The third wave of immigrants, if you will, into Shanghai from the Jewish world came from Europe as people were fleeing the events of the Shoah, of the Holocaust. That really was the period from 1939 to 1941 when at least 20,000 Jews found their way into Shanghai. In 1941, the route was really cut off for them to make it here because of the expansion of the Nazi Empire.
This is the Jerusalem Post Podcast Travel Edition. Find us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at MarkDavidPod or mail us at markdavidpod@gmail.com.
I have with me the wonderful Jay, who is leading our group and taking us around China. Tell me the story of the hundreds of books we were just looking at.
Around 1940s, there was a Jewish, and he was a teacher, and he was teaching in a school. And his neighbor is a Chinese called Mr. Lin, and the two families got along well with each other. In around 1942 or 1943, when the Jewish, and he had to leave China, I think he chose to return to Germany. So he gave all the books to Mr. Lin and said, please help me to keep all these like 1,600 books. So he left. And then Mr. Lin kept all these books in his house. But around 1942-43, at that time, Japan, was invading China, and this area was under bombing from Japanese armies. So Mr. Lin, in order to protect these books, he transported all the books to his hometown, another place called Hangzhou. So this is the first story. The second, because in the 1960s and 70s, because all the books were in English, nobody knows what it is. So in order to protect these books, he hid all these books in the wall as his son, for another 20, 30 years. And until 2013, because his house was too old and had to be dismantled. So the authority or somebody, I don't know who, when they dismantled the house, they found all these books. It's crazy, 1,600, so they found out the history. And then his maybe grandson, somebody donated all the books to this museum, and it's around 1,600. What we saw just now, only a part of it. For the remaining books, they restored in another warehouse. So we call it like a promise for 3 generations, for 7 decades. So it's a very moving story. That's it.
I've now walked into what they call Ohel Moshe, or I guess it would have been in those days, Ohel Moshe Synagogue. It was established in 1907 and moved to its present site next to what is now the Museum of the Refugees, but is where there was Jewish commerce and people lived, and it was moved to this site in 1927. If you remember, a short while ago I said when Mark and I came we couldn't visit, so I am now inside. In 2007, the Hongkou district government allocated a fund for the renovation of the building, and it's now said to be like it was in 1928. Now, something I learnt today is that about 5,000 people moved from Harbin, which is where our previous podcast was largely based, and came to Shanghai seeking opportunities. And this synagogue, which is small, was established by them. Let me try to describe the synagogue for you. It has 4 very dominant stained glass windows, one with an 8-branched or 9-branched Chanukia at the base, and then it has maybe what's meant to symbolize bottles of oil, and then olive leaves running across, and in the distance a Jerusalem with a halo of a sun above what I believe is meant to be Jerusalem. There is a Magen David or Star of David above the Aron Kodesh. The Aron Kodesh, the Holy Ark, is still here. I should tell you that the curtain, the parochet on the Ark, which is in a very deep claret, says, "Tribute to Hongkou people who provided refuge to Jews in time of need." And that was presented by the Consulate General of Israel in Shanghai. In other words, this is not the original. If I move to the next stained glass window, it too at the base has a Chanukia, the 8-branch candelabrum, and above it palm trees full of dates. Moving to the left, if I can see, the sun's there. In fact, all of them have a Chanukia at the bottom. Again, this one probably is trying to represent Jerusalem. There are many fields, as signs of agriculture. And in the final window that is visible from the lower floor, a basket of fruit, of oranges, of grapes, of pomegranates, and very, very vivid colours. The whole size of this room, this synagogue, it's not that big. It's probably 15 meters square, something like that, which is around 50 feet square. There is a ladies' gallery. We can't go up there. It's cordoned off. There is a dark wood on the facade of the women's gallery. It looks like this synagogue probably would have housed around maybe 100 men, and I'm guessing a similar number, maybe a slightly smaller number of women.
I'm surrounded by octopuses, mushrooms, stingrays, jellyfish, and I'm about to hit my balls into a snail.
Just the experience of watching 2 robot arms making your cocktail for you.
I've got this strapping thing on and a very small piece of metal that is going to hold my body on a rope.
And we were fighting as snow shifters
against yetis. So we're both in very nice floral dresses.
You're listening to the Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition with Mark Gordon and David Harris. What better to do than, after a visit to a museum and the synagogue attached, than to cross over the road and enter a cafe in a 3-story gorgeous building from, I guess, the period of all the concessions here when the Brits and the French were running the roost, and to sit and have an amazing coffee with the group and with some of our Chinese friends. This is the White Horse Cafe. In 1939, the building was bought by Rudolf Mossberg, a Jewish refugee who came to Shanghai seeking asylum, and he came with his family. The White Horse Cafe became the meeting point every day for Jewish refugees at that time. And right now in the garden, just wandering over, there is a gorgeous little pond with a lady carrying an umbrella and a little girl carrying, is it a panda? Yes. And it says, at the end of the 1930s, the Nazis crushed the steady life of the European Jews, and some of them had to flee their homes and drift to a strange city, Shanghai in China. On a stormy evening, a little Jewish girl lost her way, holding her beloved panda toy in the rain, looking for her home in front of a row of Shikumen house. Suddenly the rain stopped overhead. It turned out to be a beautiful and kind Chinese lady who was shielding her from the rain. And that's the story of this statue at this fountain. We passed the home of Michael Blumenthal, who was the former Secretary of the Treasury of the United States, and we've been walking through an area of homes that are no longer in use. Who lived there?
At that time, because Shanghai was already invaded by Japan, so this whole area was under the management of Japanese. That community, that area we just passed, most of them, or the Japanese commanders, officers live in that area, only a very small portion of Jewish live in that area.
To what extent were the Jewish people, the refugees, restricted in where they could live during the period of the Japanese control?
这整一块区域哈，大概有1.3万名左右。13,000 Jews living in this, we call it designated area, under the management of Japanese. 这里是 and it's the biggest Jewish community here.
And they could only live in this area?
The Japanese call them stateless refugees. Yes, they can only live in this area. Most from European countries.
I notice on different buildings you have plaques explaining how important is it for the local authorities, the government, to protect these places?
Because it's not only a part of the Jewish history, but also a part of the Chinese history. It also helps us to remember what happened in China, remind us to love peace and love, and that is the most important thing. And also the evidence for the invaders, like the Holocaust conducted by the Nazi in Germany, as also kind of evidence for what they have done to the Jewish. This is also the evidence to show like the Japanese, their crimes committed in China is also evidence for that, not only for Jewish but also for Chinese. It reminded us for the new generations, you cannot forget the history. I think this is the most important meaning to us here.
对，这就是它最大的意义了。
Thank you, 谢谢。
Okay.
Shanghai Fact File. The main airport is Shanghai Pudong International. There are direct flights to Shanghai from the US with American Airlines, Delta, United and China Eastern. You can also fly to Shanghai direct with Air Canada, Air France, British Airways, Emirates, Etihad, KLM and Lufthansa. The route from Tel Aviv with Hainan Airlines is currently on hold, but you can connect in Beijing or Shenzhen. You can take the Shanghai Metro Line number 2 from the airport station to People Square Metro Station. The journey takes about an hour and costs around $1. You can speed up the journey by taking the Maglev train to Longyang Road and then changing to Metro Line 2. There are also 2 airport bus lines available to the city centre. A taxi will take around 45 minutes and cost $25. There are over 5,000 hotels in Shanghai. Recommended hotels in the city include the Peninsula, Bulgari, Fairmont, Peace, Ritz-Carlton, W&J Hotel and Shanghai Tower. $1 will buy you 7.2 yuan. Shanghai weather is generally mild and moist, with hot, rainy summers and cold winters. July and August are the hottest months. The city's delta location means it rains for about a third of the year. The best time to visit Shanghai is from March to May and October to November. Shanghai has a distinct cuisine known as Hu and is characterized by the use of soy sauce. Favorite dishes include xiaolong biao, which are soup dumplings, smoked fish slices and a myriad of snacks. As Shanghai is China's most international city, cuisine from around the world is readily available. Shanghai still has a Jewish community, and kosher food can be obtained from Shanghai Kosher Market, a project of Chabad of Shanghai, which operates a restaurant 7 days a week.
I'm sitting in a lovely coffee house next to a new friend. It's somebody that I didn't know a few weeks ago. And then we met thanks to Jay, who's the host of our trip to China from the CCECC. And Efrat, you're going to introduce yourself to our listeners by telling who you are and what it is that you do in life.
Hello. So my name is Efrat Margalit, and I'm the executive director of the Association of the Former Residents of China. The association was established at the beginning of the 50s with the first Jewish that came from China. The original purpose was to help those who immigrated to Israel, to the Olim that came to Israel. And with the years, the goal was to help each other and to keep this legacy alive, which we're trying to keep on doing even 70 years and more after.
We spent a part of our tour in Harbin wandering down the main street where we were told that the cobbled stones were put in by Jewish people. There were 3 very successful banks, the biggest shopping mall and its branches all around town were Jewish owned. But you said something very interesting. You said that the organization was there to help the people when they moved to Israel. It sounds like they were coming from a very good position in the first place.
It is correct, and what I'm saying is from my knowledge and from what I hear from people. I never did any research on that, only from the stories from the people who actually came from here. There were a few communities in China. There was one very big and strong community in Harbin. There was a community in Tianjin, and there was a big community in Shanghai. So they were different, and they came to Israel under different circumstances. They also arrived here under different circumstances, and they left in different ways. So although most of them were, I can't say wealthy, but they had good life here, they came to Israel as Olim Chadashim, as immigrants, which is always difficult to find a place to live. I don't know if all of them or most of them were living in the first camps, Ma'abarot, and it was hard to start. Not all of them spoke Hebrew. They came some were born, of course, here in China. Some came to Israel after were born in Russia. Old people, families, as immigrants are. So they needed help to start a new life, which was difficult. I heard it especially in Shanghai. They left when the communists already were in control. So they actually had to flee, and they left everything behind. They took the first chance they had to leave Shanghai. They got on ships. Some arrived to the US, some eventually arrived to Australia, Canada. A lot of them came to Israel afterwards, but first of all, they left China. So it depends how they left China.
In a minute or two, we'll get on to more touristic things, but I'd like to ask something more personal about you. The other people who are in the group all have family who came from, in this case, Harbin. You don't have any direct familial connection to China. So what got you involved in all of this in the first place?
First of all, the things that I've been doing during the years, I was working in tourism, doing a lot of operation. My work is very varied, and I'm doing a lot of things in the association. So all the knowledge and the skills that I have were good for what I'm doing now. But like I say, I planted my roots by myself in China, because the first time I was in China was in 1997, after my first year in university, where I studies of East Asia and geography for my bachelor. I studied geography for my master's, but then I came back to China. So 1997 was the first time. I came back in 2005, and I studied Chinese in Beijing. Then I stayed in China. I traveled a lot. I lived in Beijing. I came back home, and then I came back to China, and I was working in an Australian company guiding tours mainly on the Trans-Siberian and Trans-Mongolian Railway, which was Russia, Mongolia, and China. So we're back in China. And then I was guiding Israelis, same route, and in China. So I've been going back to China. I can manage. I find my way in Chinese, so it feels like home. So in a way, it's my home. And also, I get connected with the people, especially today. It's very emotional to be here with them when they know that's where they came from, actually.
Why China? What's your obsession, your love, your passion, and also Mongolia? What is it about this part of the world that excites you so much?
I have a lot of stories. Are you sure, David? Do you want me to start?
I can already tell you that once Efrat starts telling stories, she tells stories. But no, a couple of stories would be great.
I can tell you why I decided to study Chinese. I lived in Bangkok then, in Thailand, and I knew I wanted to go back to Israel and go to the university. I knew I wanted to study a language, and I wanted to study a language that not too many Israelis can speak. And that's how I started to study Chinese. And as soon as I started to study the language, the culture, the history, it was just fascinating. And then I just kept coming back here and study and look into it. And at the same time, I started to visit Mongolia, which I've been, I don't know how many times. Again, the history, the people. I love the history, but I definitely love to know and understand life nowadays in the places that I visit. It feels like home. Although, even when you live here, even if my Chinese was better, which is okay, but even when it's better, as soon as you leave home and you're out on the street, you're a foreigner. Doesn't matter what you do. The way you look, it's hard. But I think that's another challenge that I like.
Why Beijing? That's your passion in terms of China.
I love Beijing. Like, it's a huge city, but then has the quiet gardens and quiet neighborhoods. It's very Western, but then you can find the traditional food, the traditional feeling. You can ride bike, but you can go on the metro, which is very, again, Western. You have everything in Beijing. There are a lot of places in China that I love, but Beijing really feels like coming home, even after a few years that I haven't been here.
A couple of times already in the interview, you've used the word home. Now, you live in Israel. Is there something similar about Israel and China that makes you use the word home when referring to both of these countries?
I have to think for a second here.
It's not often I ask good questions.
Well, the first thing that I have in mind, sorry, but it's not about Israel and China. It's the things that I feel when I travel, because I've been traveling a lot, and it's about the feeling. It doesn't matter if the house is a big house or a nice house or a good house. It's the feeling. So when it feels right, when the people around me are the right people, when I find the places that makes me feel comfortable. So it goes for Israel and for China and for our other places in the world that I like to visit, but especially here, that maybe familiar sounds and smells and flavors and people. People gives me the feeling of home.
If an Israeli or Jewish person or anybody listening to this podcast is thinking about coming to China, I think quite a lot of people are going to be nervous about the size, about the language and so on. Have you got any tips for people planning a trip to China or thinking, should I or shouldn't I?
A lot of times when we come to something new or we see something new, we're afraid of it, especially if it's the language, the food, like here in China, the looks of people even. I have to say something small. When I just came here, I thought, but what if I don't recognize my friends because we think that all Chinese look the same, which is awful to say because nobody looks the same. And then I met an Israeli friend who lived here. We didn't meet each other for many years, and then just before we met, he told me, please, when you see me, call me. I might not recognize you because when I go back to Israel from China, everybody looks the same. So depends where you're coming from. Because it's something so different, we might be afraid of it. But it's definitely today. Like, I think I would give you a different answer if it was a few years ago. When I was first traveling here, I was carrying dictionaries, like books, the real dictionary that we used to have. Now everything is so simple with all the Google Translate and all the other things that can translate. So if you just smile to people and you're open to new experiences, and if you're vegetarian, you know how to say it, Yeah, that's you and me. Then you can find your way and you prepare yourself and you know where you want to go. And even if you don't get there, it's okay. You'll get somewhere else, which is nice. It happened to me in China at the beginning, by the way.
What's the story?
I was going somewhere and there was another place with a similar name, and when I was on the bus after a few hours, I'm realizing I'm not going where I wanted to go. It was a great few days in the place that I never thought I'm going to get to. So it's okay. You have to be very open to things.
Let's go back to where we started and the conversation about the association that you manage. How does it affect you emotionally, this type of work? I mean, you've got your jobs and you're arranging meetings, and it's amazing that you give scholarships to people as an organisation, but on the very personal level, how does it affect you?
Well, just before, when we were boarding in Israel, I had a call from one of the members, a woman. I never met her. I talked to her on the phone a few times. She was born in Shanghai, I think. And they told her I can't talk very long because we're boarding the flight to China. And she just called to say that the last bulletin, our newsletter that we published, is beautiful, and she got it and she's so happy. And then I told her we're going, and she became so emotional. And she said, please take photos, please call me when you're back. So that's just one example, and it feels so, with some of them I feel like they're my family. And yeah, so it's a lot more than just, organizing things the right way or making sure everybody gets their scholarships. It's much more than that. It's connecting with the people and the families, because it's about the people here. The people, their families, and my family is originally from Ukraine. I wish there was something like that to connect me to our roots. So maybe in a way, although my roots are not from here, it feels, because a lot of them came from Russia and from Eastern Europe, which is like my family. My grandfather's father left Ukraine, like escaped from Ukraine, and eventually, from the information we got, he died in Tajikistan, and he was buried in Dushanbe. There's no grave. So I just said, and it's the same years, so I told people, maybe I told you, if you only got on a different train, and maybe if he took the Trans-Siberian train, maybe he would eventually ended up here and everything would have been different. So maybe it connects me to my root, although they didn't make it all the way here.
Efrat, thank you so much indeed. And also thank you for looking after me and making sure that I got my passport with its shiny visa with the picture of the Great Wall of China on it. Thanks for everything.
Thank you, and I'm really happy I met you.
Is myth like what someone is before they become a Mrs.?
Have we just come back from a winery and we're a little bit sicker?
This is the most bizarre tourist attraction in Israel, I reckon.
I'm going for a steak. Let's hope it will love me tender.
A juniper bush! A juniper bush!
And he's buried here and in Jerusalem, possibly. There's a bird behind me. I need to run, but I've got no legs.
You're listening to the Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition with Mark Gordon and David Harris. I've come to yet another place in Shanghai that Mark and I didn't visit last year. We were in this area, but didn't actually come into what are known as the Yew Garden. It was built in the 16th century, around 1560 to 1570 was the time of the building, during the Ming dynasty. It was built by a government official called Pan Yunduan. It was meant to be a retirement home or retreat for his father, to give him a peaceful place in his old age. So the word yu means pleasing or comforting. It was considered in its time one of the most prestigious homes and gardens in Shanghai. It suffered damage during wars and rebellions ever since, till the 20th century, when it underwent a major restoration. It was opened to the public about 65 years ago and is now a national cultural monument. For many people, even though this is a huge area, this represents the ideal home. There's a hill of rocks within, there's flowing water, there are those very classical style Chinese buildings, low, beautiful, with golds and lots of wood being the main building material here. There's in the distance, you may be able to already hear a little waterfall. There's a grand rockery, which is this artificial hill, and it stands about 14 metres, 15 metres, which is, doing it quickly, somewhere between 45 and 50 feet. There's a 5-ton porous jade rock. There are pavilions and corridors and ponds, winding paths and cloisters. In the same area, if you do come here, you will also find the Yuyuan Bazaar, which is where Mark and I spent time last year. And if you go to our YouTube channel, Mark and David's Travels, you will find us sampling the delights of that area, tasting multiple candies in our mouths at the same time, as is the type of thing that we do, and a whole lot of other fun things. It's a wonderful, wonderful place to spend a half, if not a full day, and also a great place to find lots of tourist-style gifts. Oh, Mark.
Oh, David,
I
did you
wish
miss
you were
me?
here. I did. I honestly did. But then again, I know it was rainy, but you were in one of the most beautiful cities on earth, in Rome.
Yes, I was. And having seen all the wonderful sights, some of which I saw with you, I worked out it was more than 10 years ago when we came here to watch football.
Wow.
It's been great coming back, and my wife has loved it for the first time. The only bummer is that the Pantheon, they now charge you to go in.
No.
Yes, since 2023.
Oh my goodness. I get it. That's kind of sad.
Having gone around Rome, it is beautiful, but like a lot of Italian cities, it just needs that little bit of maintenance and modernization. So I can understand that with all the tourists coming in, they have to make them pay for the upkeep. So yeah, I get it.
I totally understand the idea of modernising. I think we should knock down the Circus Maximus, take out the Colosseum, the Forum. Well, it's basically a bunch of old rubble, isn't it? Let's destroy them all, put in a nice shopping centre. That'd be great. That's modernisation for you.
Kind of like the centre of Jerusalem today.
Do you know what? That is not a bad comparison. But I have to say that Rome, for me, even though I am from the Jerusalem Post, far surpasses Jerusalem as a tourist destination. Yes, you've got the real holiness of 3 religions in Jerusalem, but every single stone that you look at in Rome tells a story.
Even in our metro station at Republica, you go underneath, and the station's quite grotty, but there are these perspex windows, and underneath it shows you the foundations of the area from 2,000 years ago.
Wow. Anyway, are you familiar with the Hebrew expression, lo lazeh hit kanasnu?
No.
Basically, it means that's not what we're meant to be talking about, because we're meant to be talking about me and my journey.
Yeah, go for it. Let's talk about David. It's always that way.
I think I just Shanghai'd you.
Ooh.
Thank you very much. It's been an amazing, amazing trip. We've spent 10 days in China, Beijing, Tianjin, Harbin, and now in Shanghai. I find Shanghai a little bit too busy for me. I know you love it. And it's got that mix of the Western and so on. In fact, as I left the hotel this evening, the first people that I saw were Western, even though we're in a sort of quiet residential area, which is Chinese. So it's a very different experience to the other towns where you really feel like you are the outsider.
In a way, I quite like that, because I just felt that you could get by and communicate, and it had that sense of familiarity. I wasn't in a completely strange land. I remember we went out in Shenzhen last year, and it took us ages just to try and find a corner where we could communicate with people just so we could get our dinner. So I like the balance of Shanghai, but that's mainly because at heart, I'm still just a good old Englander.
I have to say that I was planning in Beijing to do a day trip on my own. And in the end, I chickened out for various reasons. But to some extent, it's a good job that I did, because just getting to the train station that I needed to get to in order to leave Beijing would have been a whole adventure. And then the town that I was planning on heading to, which is called Zhaozhou, about a 30-minute train ride outside of town, about 50 miles away. Basically, I've been told nobody speaks English. Their dish there that they serve is donkey meat. How do I explain, hi, I'm vegetarian, etc., etc., etc.? I hear you. I do hear you.
They would just look at you, look you up and down, look how sad you are, and go, oh, he doesn't eat donkey. You'd be fine.
Listen, I have to say, though, this has been a phenomenal trip. And for that, I have to say thank you to the organisation that brought us out here, the CCECC. Those are the folks who built the Red Line on the light railway in Tel Aviv and the Carmel tunnels up near Haifa and all sorts of other projects going up right now in housing around Israel. So that's to the head of the office in Israel, Eric, the irrepressible, amazing, wonderful Jay, who led our trip through China. And without him, we would have been very lost. And to Eyal, who is an Israeli staff member there, who is just simply wonderful. And he can do things with his body that when I was his age, I could only have dreamed of. He is so fit, it's untrue. And a big thank you to George from the CCECC, who used to head the office in Israel, but is now one of the senior officials in this giant civil engineering company. So thanks to all of them.
Time for a quiz question?
The question was, and you can try to guess the answer, what is the total route length of the Shanghai Metro, the longest underground system in the world? And as you suggested earlier, you can tell me in miles and or kilometres.
Was it 550 miles?
That is extremely close.
I remember it from last time, but...
You're so freakish with your memory. I'm so impressed. I'm so jealous. The answer is about 515 miles and 830 kilometres, making it the longest urban metro network on planet Earth. Folks, if you've enjoyed this series, if you've got any questions, if you've got any requests, places you'd like us to cover, either by going to visit, in which case you'll have to cover our costs, or places that you would like us to interview representatives from, get in touch. The ways to do it at Mark David Pod across social media, markdavidpod@gmail.com.
Cool. We shall be reunited at the weekend, I believe.
Very excited. That'll be another podcast to look forward to, folks, but we won't tell you what it is. You'll just have to tune in a few weeks' time to hear another episode of the Jerusalem Post Podcast Travel Edition.
Arrivederci, my dear friend.
Bye-bye, everybody. Take care. Or as they say in China, bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye.